why such a story for children? I want an answer from you. Why would this be an appropriate, or if you feel inappropriate, story for young people? It's not for children below a certain age, but it certainly is a story for young people. And why is it? Would anybody like to answer? Yeah.
Because the world isn't fair, so you could argue that saying, oh, but how can we show children the horrors of the world? But the thing is, children are going to learn about it eventually, and it's better to do it in an environment where you can show them why it's bad and slowly introduce them to these concepts in a safe manner, rather than just leaving them out in the world to discover it for themselves, maybe even firsthand. It gives them that preparedness and knowledge, and while some might think it's a bad thing, I think it's a good thing. It reduces their naivety. It reduces the naivety, and they know what to expect, and they understand that life might not be good for everyone.
Yeah.
And I believe it helps children not only understand that there are things wrong in the world, but it gives them a drive to help make it better. Because, I mean, children are genuinely the most pure people in society. So it builds that drive in them to want to improve the world.
That's exactly it, because there's another.
It's appropriate because it teaches children, such as myself, about why exactly these things should be stopped. If they see it at an older age, they might not exactly be perfectly sensed to it. There might also be a chance that they'll learn about other concepts and end up supporting the riots.
Yeah.
And be on the wrong side of the crowd.
Oh, that's very well put, that you may, if you're not prepared, you may find yourself on the wrong side, right? You know, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, he read one of my books when he was president, and it's amazing that the president of the country would take the time to read children's books. And he honored me on Republic Day when he was president at the Rashtrapati Bhavan. But he asked me a question. He said, I really liked your book. It's a very powerful book. But why is it for children? Shouldn't children have happy stories? How would you answer him? And that's a book called No Guns at My Son's Funeral, about a young boy, 12-year-old boy, who becomes a militant, who gets sucked into militancy.
Yeah, so thank you for that beautiful reading that you did. As a parent, I would like to answer that children are the future. So we need to think how we want that future to be. And if we just protect them so much that they're not aware of the realities of life, I think they're not going to grow up and understand the conflict and the complexities of life.
Yeah.
So I think as a parent, I would say this needs to be part of children's literature so that they are sensitized to all the complexities and they can become better human beings.
Thank you. Thank you. There was a beautiful slogan of one of the Neve festivals. Do you prepare the path for your child, or do you prepare your child for the path? You know? And obviously you can't prepare the path well enough, because there will be people throwing stones into that path, and there will be unexpected obstacles. So isn't it better to prepare your child for the path? And what I said to Dr. Kalam, who I respect and continue to respect greatly, is that it's not a happy world in which children are living. And we cannot fool them into thinking it is so. They have high exposure right now to all kinds of facts and truths and falsehoods. And they need to be able to question. But my other answer, which he really liked, was that children are powerful beings. And through my stories, I want to empower them to be that instrument of change. And I have a story about, in a book of mine called I'm Not Butter Chicken, You Can't Order Me. Which, by the way, I'll first tell you a funny thing that happened with that book. So one day I was in a school and a teacher came back from a class and the teacher was weeping. And she was saying these children are just so badly behaved, they're so this, so that, like these smart aleck, they've got these sharp tongues in their heads and all that. She was very upset, she was crying. So everyone said, what happened? And she said, I told the class to do something, and this one child says, we're not butter chicken, you can't order us. Where do they get these lines from? And I'm thinking, oh no, he got it from my book. So in that story, in that there is a story called Bablu's Bhabhi, which is about a young boy who every day sees his bhabhi being beaten by his elder brother. Every day he sees it, and every day he turns his back. And he feels, I'm such a coward. I hate it. It makes me angry. It makes me so many things. But he turns away. Until finally, he battles his elder brother, and he knocks him to the floor, and he sits astride him and said, if you raise your hand one more time, I will hand you over to the police. I will hand you over and you will be in jail if you raise your hand one more time. Now, that is a story which explores what is manhood? What is it to be a mard? Because this is a boy, Bablu himself, when he appeals to his mother that why don't you stop it? And the mother's reply is, it's a woman's kismat. This is what happens. It happened with my mother. It happened with me. Now it's happening with your bhabhi. And the boy questions, and is it a man's kismat? Is it my role in life to be a person who beats his wife? Is that the only way I can be a man? So it's an important question. Came out of an actual incident where a friend of mine had left her husband who was violent, and a few months down the line, the son became violent with his sister and mother. And he was so upset by what he had done. The boy himself, after having beaten his sister and his mother, he came to my house in tears. And he said, I don't know what comes over me. And he was fulfilling his role as man of the house as he knew it from his father. So that's why I wrote that story. And when I told this story to a group of children, they listened to the story and everything, then they had gone away. And this one girl stayed back and asked a common question, is the story true? And I said, what do you think? And she said, it's definitely true. So I said, how do you say with so much confidence that it's definitely true? And she said, because it happens in my house. By which time other children had come back and they joined the conversation. And many of them admitted to having witnessed or heard of domestic violence. So I said, so what can you do? First of all, I said, how do you feel? And they all said angry and you know, very disgusted and everything. But what they all felt was helpless. Bebas is the word that they used. They felt that they had no recourse to any action. So then so then one of them said that, well, what happens in the story, that's a story. Anything can happen in a story. We can't do it in real life. So I said, all right, so what can you do? You can't do that, what happened in the story, but what can you do? And one girl said, when I grow up, I'll refuse to be beaten by my husband. And one of the boys said, when I grow up and I get married, if I'm having a fight with my wife, I'll fight with her. I won't raise my hand. That's what I can do. And that is why conflict literature is so essential. Because if I had gone into that class full of children and said, किसके घर में domestic violence होता है? In whose home is there domestic violence? None of them would have got up. But stories provide this safe space of fiction. Because it's a story, because it's fiction, I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about somebody else. And so I can comment on that story. It's a story. But I'm actually talking about myself or about somebody I know, and I've opened the door, and I'm finding maybe some solutions. You know? How much time do we have? We're out of time. Any questions quickly that you would like to ask? I know this was a very short session on a very important subject, but anything that you would like to ask, or and after that, I have a question for you before you leave. Yeah.
Thank you. That was very powerful.
Thank you.
I wondered, as an author, when you're writing about conflict, how do you know when to stop? How much is too much?
There was a fantastic session at the first Neve Festival, which is how dark is too dark. It's a very good question. And here is the taboo or the rule I have put upon myself when writing for young people. I always leave on an upswing, on a moment that there is hope, that there is action. Because especially as I'm writing a lot of these stories for young adults and teenagers, it's a dark time. It's a very dark and confusing time, right? You're often feeling like the world is collapsing around you. But I want to leave my reader with the sense that no matter how dark that tunnel is, there is a light, and I can move towards that light. So that is what I won't go to a place of complete despair. But I have a question for you. What are the subjects that you would like me or other writers to write on, you feel that haven't been covered in books for you?
More or less the topic of people of different nationalities in countries that are not their origin place. We're actually seeing this right now. In the UK, Hindus are actively being kicked out, and with their businesses being closed just for being Hindu.
So this book, Nomads Land, is exactly that. It's about two girls who belong to peoples who have been driven out. One is a Kashmiri Pandit girl, and when the Kashmiri Pandits were driven out of Kashmir and made nomads in their own land, and I made up a tribe of people. I made up their language, their culture, their customs and everything. Her name is Pema, and she and her people have also been driven out. and some of them are having to live in hiding. So yes, but that is a very important subject, writing about people who are different, whether from another country or different in some way. Yes.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi.
Ma'am, my question is like nowadays I see more young people use always phones and technology. So how can we keep them away from phone and we can show like without phone also they can survive in this world?
Yeah.
It's not always like technology. Without technology also humans were alive and we can survive without that, right?
Okay. What do you feel? You guys there, up there, come on. What are your answers to that? Yeah.
While I think it's important to spend some time away from technology, I don't think it's like, yes, we can survive without technology, and yes, it is important to use it in control, but it exists and it makes our life better in a lot of ways. So it's not a useful pursuit to try and rid ourselves of it completely. So I think that, I mean, an excess of anything is always, harmful, and that's a very old saying. So I think as long as we use it in amounts that we can control and amounts that we are aware of, there's absolutely nothing wrong with using technology.
But this is true that sometimes you're not even aware that you're on your mobile and you're just scrolling and swiping and somebody is talking to you, but as parents, I'm sure we all have experienced this, that you're talking and you're wondering, is any sound coming out of my mouth? Like, sometimes I think that balance does need to be found. And certainly I think some adults like me need to be saved from mobile technology. I'm going to write a book on autocorrect is not my friend, because the kind of dreadful mistakes that have gone out from my phone to people, I can't even tell you. Like it's very embarrassing.
Okay,
Yeah.
I have I have a question which is hi. I have a question which is actually a follow-up to what
Yeah.
was just asked. As somebody who takes your books to children and reads to them, it becomes overwhelming at times to even talk about it. I want to understand, as an author, when you go through this process of research and write, how do you ensure that you are not affected? How do you keep yourself safe? Because it is also a very, for lack of a better word, it's a traumatic space.
Yeah.
It truly is, like, because of all your books that I've read and I've spoken to it about children, I end up researching, and it gets extremely overwhelming.
Yeah.
And when you take it to privileged spaces, it makes it feel even more like,
Yeah.
that
gap.
the gap.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with it, and what are your ways of?
I think as a writer, and the process that I follow, I need to immerse myself. I need to inhabit that parallel universe. I become the person that I'm writing about. I'm living in their skin. So I'm not Paro writing as Pema or Akram or Amber. I am Amber. I am Akram. And it's very difficult for my family, I have to say. My family always say that, it's not easy living with a writer. And sometimes when I'm being very weird in my behavior, they ask, are you writing a book? And I said, yeah. And they say, oh no. There we go. Because, I cannot protect myself if I am to feel the raw pain of what my character is going through. I have to feel it sharply. Yeah. I think we're out of time now. Oh, you had, okay, one last question.
Yeah, it was so like you cover a lot of diverse topics and diverse types of suffering. So do you ever worry about authenticity, or do you ever, just to phrase it better, do you ever worry that when you write a story about someone's situation, it is an authentic, real experience for them, and you're not
Yeah.
just faffing for the sake of it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And there have been a couple of places. There's a book of mine called The Other, where this girl and boy are best friends. And the girl is, the mother has started saying, oh, now you've grown up, don't take your friend to your room, you should be in the drawing room, don't shut the door and all of this. She's worried, as parents should be and are. But then this boy turns to his, this girl is talking about a new boy who's come in to the school, and she's got this huge crush on him, on the new boy. And her best friend, who she's known all his life, says, I have a crush on him too. And says, I'm a girl. I'm not a boy, I'm a girl. I didn't know how to take that story further from there. I had a very hard time with just that, with the authenticity of that. And so I wrote it not from the boy's story, but from the girl's story. That I could understand. I couldn't inhabit his skin. Maybe someday I will, or I thought maybe someday someone else takes up this story and writes it. I found my voice wasn't true, and so I inverted the point of view. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed that session.